Aboro, Aboye, Abosheshe, and Ekabo to everyone. Today's show is going to be about financial empowerment. But before we get into the meat of things, we would open as usual with an Udu Ifa essay. Today's Udu Ifa essay is taken from A.G. Okbe, and it reads, "Let us not engage the world hurriedly. Let us not grasp at the rope of wealth impatiently. That which should be treated with mature judgment, let us not deal with in a state of uncontrolled passion. When we arrive at a cool place, let us rest fully. Let us give continuous attention to the future, and let us give deep consideration to the consequences of things. And this because of our eventual passing." Okay, well, for the last two episodes, we have been discussing finances, we've been discussing budget and planning, and the very first stream was about collective economics for members of our community. So today, I want to talk a little bit about the Isusu again, but today I want to go a little bit into the history and where it originated, why we practice it, and why we need at this stage to practice collective economics. Before I go into the history and to give a clear understanding of it, I came across an Udu from Oyeku Hirosu, and in this reading it mentions the Susu, all right, but it wasn't referred to by that name. It was simply called Eshu, all right. Oyeku Hirosu reads, "Ifa wishes this person well. Ifa exhorts him to form a money contributing group called a Shu. This is the Ifa verse that established a Shu. This person would have rest and become a rich man." Okay, I found this to be a very, very interesting essay that was taken from Oyeku Hirosu. All right, now I'm going to talk a little bit, or rather, I'm going to read from a document. This document was written by Associate Professor of Anthropology of the Northwestern University in the United States. The professor's name is William R. Bascom. Okay, and the article is about the Isusu or the Esusu, right? A credit institution of the Yoruba. Right? I'm going to read this article and then I'm going to go into some discussions after this article concerning where the actual origin is, whether it is the Igbos or the Nupe or even the Congolese people. But first, let me read this article that was written by the professor of anthropology. The article reads, "The Esusu is one of the economic institutions of the Yoruba of Nigeria. It has elements which resemble a credit union, an insurance scheme, and a savings club. But it is distinct from all of these. The Esusu is a fund to which a group of individuals make fixed contributions of money at fixed intervals. The total amount contributed by the entire group is assigned to each of the members in rotation. Aside from the Yoruba, there is an excellent description of this institution among the neighboring Nupe, where it is known as Dashi in Hausa, with essentially the same patterns. It has also been recorded among the Negroes of Trinidad, where it is known as Susu, and where it is obviously an African retention which can be traced back to a Yoruba origin. This was written by Huskovitz in 1947, right, on page 76 and 77, as well as page 292 of his document. The article continues. In Nigeria, the Esusu group is commonly known in English as a contributions club. In the extensive literature on the Yoruba themselves, the Esusu is only infrequently mentioned. The most detailed description is that of Ajasefi in 1924 on pages 48 and 49 of his research paper, which is quoted here in its sixth part, in full in the footnotes. It was also mentioned by Johnson in 1921 in his document on page 119, which states briefly that Esusu is a universal custom for clubbing together of a number of persons for monetary aid. A fixed sum agreed upon is given by each at a fixed time, usually every week, and placed under a president. The total amount is paid over to each member in rotation. This enables a poor man to do something worthwhile with a lump sum where a lump sum is required. There are laws regulating this system. In the Yoruba dictionary, Eshu is defined as a club organized for the purpose of assisting members in monetary matters. Actually, the Esusu differs from a club in that many Esusu groups hold no meeting and that the members frequently are not known to one another. Even the head of the Esusu group may not know who all the members are. Moreover, the term Esusu referred to the fund rather than the group of contributors. One may say, I took Esusu or money today, but one must say, I went to the meeting or place of my Esusu today. The number of contributors, the size of the contributions, the length of the intervals at which they are made vary from one group to another. For the purpose of illustration, however, we may imagine a single case where 20 members contribute 1 shilling each monthly at the end of 20 months while completing the cycle. In this case, each member will have contributed 20 shillings or £1 and will, on one occasion, have received the amount of £1 in return. In theory, at least each member is paid back in one lump sum exactly what he has paid in contributions during the course of the cycle. So this is basically the concept of the susu as it has been used traditionally. Now, I'm going to discuss a little bit of what it is versus what it is today versus what it has been in the past. All right. Or even before I do that, let me talk a little bit about the history, because although the article I just read credits it to a practice among the Yorubas, other research that I have done also mention the Hausas, and it also mentioned in particular the Igbos, all right, that are located closer on the other side of Nigeria close to what is called the Niger Congo. So this particular group called the Igbos also have the practice, and the name Esusu actually originated among the Igbos. Among the Yorubas, it's also called Ajo, and among the Hausas or the Nupe people, it is called Adashi. All right. So basically, what we know about it, it could also be referred to, because many people refer to it as a contribution club. Some people refer to it as a rotating credit association. Now, one might ask, at this stage, why would something such as a susu be an important source of funding for our community? Well, traditionally in Africa, it was used for achieving community goals or communal goals. Uh, that would have been the main reason for it. The other reason, from which I think the concept of insurance came, would have been a collective emergency fund. And the reality is, in most instances, with insurance, like with an emergency fund, one would hope that they would not have to use the money that would come from an emergency fund. Meaning, one would not hope to get sick. One would not hope to have a debt. One would not hope to be in a situation where they would be immediately needing a large amount of resources. Okay? This is how insurance operates, modern insurance. They pool money from a wide range of people, right? And the reality is, not all of these people would actually have the emergency where they would be able to draw down on the resources. We have auto insurance, and that's a very good example. You pay that insurance once a year, or in some cases, you pay it half, or every quarter, or however you pay it. But the reality is, if you never get in an accident, you never use the money. And we all hope that we don't get in a car crash or in a wreck, right? So that we have to use that emergency money. But what happens to that money if you don't use it? The money is dead. You never get anything back from it, right? But in the case of using it as for the communal good, in that case, the benefits come directly to members of that particular community. All right. I would like to think, given the current economic crunch with the whole COVID situation, I would think that we would recognize as a community, as an African community, as the Ifa Orisa community, as the conscious community, that whenever economy contracts, then a lot of hardship falls on the lower class of society. Among the poor, things become even more difficult. Survival becomes more challenging, more of a struggle. And during such times, survival is the key element that everyone thinks about, how it is they are going to survive, how they're going to get the next meal, how they're going to send the kids to school, how they're going to be able to pay the rent, how they're going to be able to pay their higher purchase bills. There are so many expenses that one incurs from living, and particularly if you have a family, particularly when you have children. In order to be an adequate provider, one has to make sure that all the needs of your family are met. All right? These goals are goals that can be achieved with a great measure of effort, collective effort. So, in the case of our community, where we have the great need for many things, we have the need for institutions in particular, the need for schools, as well as the need for many amenities and services it is very, very important that we look in the direction of collective economics. Okay? Um, why the need? Why now? Many questions could be asked. All right. Let's look at the state of the economy. Let's look at the banking sector. All right. Since the COVID, as much as it's not announced and as much as it's not discussed a lot in the public forum, if one was to look around, one would discover that a particular bank had to close a branch already. But you know, you're not going to read that on the Guardian and the Express because, you know, for public relations purposes, they try to keep some things under wraps so that people wouldn't really know the difficulties that they are going through. But at the same time, a lot of our people, members of our community, save their money in these institutions. All right? And everybody knows the interest rate that is paid by banks are very low. And in some cases, the service fees that you find yourself paying to the banks are greater in some cases than the interest that you earn on your money. When this occurs, then putting your money in the bank does not become a viable option, meaning that one would have to reconsider whether it is worth it to put your money in the bank, especially if at the end of the day you are losing value on your dollar. All right, we live in times where inflation is rising. By what do I mean by inflation? Generally, when the value of goods and services keep rising, that is what the term inflation is referring to. Meaning, if you buy a pound of flour today, next year there might be a budget. The price of flour might go up 3%, 4%. The money that you put to sit down in the bank, that is not gaining you any interest, because in fact, we just recognized that the fees that the banks charge is greater than the interest that you collect. So therefore, the money that you put in the bank, you will actually be losing some of that money between now and next year. While at the same time, the prices of food is going up. So even if you were getting enough interest to offset the fees that you pay at the bank, and the same amount of money you deposit in your account is the same amount of money you have next year around this time, if the price of the food products that you buy and the services that you use increases, then you've actually effectively lost on the money. You've lost on the money because the money now has less value to you next year than it did a year ago. So when we talk about inflation, we're talking about the fact that money loses value with a rising cost of living. So the big question is, how do you counteract this type of effect? How are you able to put your money in a place where you would be guaranteed some level of interest that may even keep up with the cost of living? All right, and when we say cost of living, I just explained what that is the fact that the goods and services that you normally use, when the price of that increases, when the rates at which you pay for the services increases, then the value of your money becomes less. So if you were to save the same amount of money between this year and next year, you're going to have less purchasing power next year. Okay, so we discussed the banks. Let's discuss other institutions where you can actually put your money. All right, we have credit unions. Credit unions might make a good alternative to bank. When you compare the interest that you receive on your money versus the fees that you would have to pay. Do credit unions has or charge as many fees as the commercial banks? No, they do not. Does the credit union offer a higher interest rate than the commercial banks? Yes, they do in most instances. Okay. How so? What type of accounts can you have with a credit union? Most credit unions have deposits or saving account, and they also have what is called a shares account. When you deposit your money into the credit union and your money goes onto shares, what you are in fact effectively doing is you are assuming part ownership of the credit union, meaning that you now actually has an interest. This is the term that you're going to hear some people use, but this term interest here is not the interest like profit. This interest means that you have an invested interest in the credit union because you actually now own shares, which is part ownership of the credit union. And what the credit union does for you when you buy into the ownership of the credit union is they pay you what is called dividends on your shares. When you do the deposit for the savings in the credit union, that too offers some level of interest. But in most cases, when people put money in a deposit account in the credit union, this is money that they would be withdrawing at any time that they want to utilize that money. Whereas when you deposit your money onto shares, you cannot simply walk into the credit union and walk back out with the full amount. It does not work that way, because what is going to have to happen if you have shares in the credit union and you are desirous of liquidating your shares, making your shares into cash, then basically the credit union will have to now sell your shares to another patron or another customer. So that process now also takes a little time. Okay? But the truth and the reality is, as compared to a commercial bank, your money is safer. You're guaranteed to get a little interest. You're also guaranteed to get dividends depending on what type of account you deposit your money on in the credit union. There may be a couple of other financial institutions where people put money. Insurance companies are a place where people also put a lot of money. Right? There are many different types of insurance policies, of which I do not wish to go into right now. But there are some forms of investment that insurance companies offer, where you could pay over a period of time and then you could actually collect as long as the policy matures. All right? But generally, most people use insurance for emergencies and for accidents. And again, as I pointed out, the article that I read at the beginning would have explained that traditionally, among the Yoruba people, they did have an emergency fund where people would be allowed to come in and to get money or to save their money there for the rainy day. That is the term that people normally use, saving money for the rainy day. But this, of course, is a traditional African practice. It was not called insurance, but it was called an emergency fund. And actually, even though your money went in, it was also considered emergency borrowing if you were to go to get money. All right? Now, let's go back a little bit to the community part of it. I mentioned earlier that in the Ifa Orisa community, we need institutions. All right? And I mentioned one of the main institutions that we need which is we need educational institutions. And I think the urgency for that particular area is so that we can invest our resources into our most important asset, which is our children. It is time that we have a say in the future of our own children. We should not leave it up to some other institution, some other religious group, not even the government, to decide the destiny of your child. If the child was initiated under the Sentai at the child's birth, and the child's destiny was determined from at that stage, it is important from there forward that as responsible parents, that we play an active role in guiding the life of that child in the direction that it is supposed to go. Having our own educational institutions would allow us to have some measure of influence and control over what goes into the minds of our children. Whether it is going to be useful or whether it is going to be injurious to them, we as parents have the responsibility to know and to find out these things and to do what is necessary to ensure that our children are able to fulfill their destiny. And I'm not going to ask for an ashe, because every person who has been initiated is supposed to be aware of these things. As a responsible initiate, and as an individual who has charted a course for their own destiny and for the development of their own good, balanced, noble character, as a person with a family, you have that responsibility. Okay? Now, we could talk also a little bit about curriculum designing and the importance of having schools that have properly designed academic programs for children, for our children. Okay? It's novel and it's very interesting what we learned when we attended elementary school about slavery and about the Carib and the Arawaks and Christopher Columbus being a hero and all that nice fantasy stuff that never happened in the way that we were told. We do not want our children to be receiving those type of fallacious education. We don't want our children being groomed and conditioned by white supremacy, being told that somebody is going to come out of the sky with an apron on their back to save them. We don't need that. I don't mean this in any derogatory way, and I don't mean to be offensive to anyone, despite whatever your belief might be. But I am saying, if we have to educate our children, we should focus on Isheshe, first thing first, teaching our children what is their heritage and what is their tradition. So in designing our syllabus, we would be able to guide them accordingly so that they will know who they are, who were their ancestors, and the contributions that their ancestors has made to humanity. All right? This is not a history class. I ain't going to give a long list of all the contributions we've been making since antiquity, but I am saying it is important for our children to be taught these things so that they will have a greater level of consciousness and confidence and ambition and interest, because I would explain this to you. If your child is in a classroom and the information that is being imparted onto the child is not engaging the interest of the child, then the child is not going to learn. So therefore, it is important when the syllabus is being designed that we include things about the child's own existence, about the child's own daily experiences, that would have the child engaged and locked in to what is being taught. That is one of the keys to education. Having children engaged, having them interested, teaching them things that relates to their experiences. Things that they could go home and say, well, ma or pa, you know what we learned today? We learned so and so. Isn't this what we see all the time here? And I was asking you all, and you told me, well, my teacher was telling us the same thing today. Things that the children could actually relate to. Not Jack and Jill climbing up no hill. Right? Maybe if you were to told me somebody with a Yoruba name, a male and a female, going somewhere, I might be more inclined to want to listen to it. Tell me they're going by the river or they're going by the spring or something. Something that I see and something that I know and something that I experience. So yes, I am not advocating that you don't give the children a general education where they learn about different peoples, different experience. But what I am saying is charity begins at home and ends abroad. It's a common saying. We've all heard it. Children must be taught about themselves. Children must be taught about their environment, their immediate environment, the environment that they function in. Children must be taught that our tradition is a natural, nature-based tradition, that we care about the space that we live in. You may say, what does this have to do with economics? It has everything to do with economics. Because everything that we use in this environment should come from the environment, and it should be able to go back into the environment without destroying everything around us. All right? Educating our children to function within our community, educating our children to develop skills and knowledge that is useful for the development of our community is also important. We need to be a self-sufficient community. So not only do we need the doctors and the lawyers, but we also need people to plant food so that we can have food to eat. We need to have people to prepare the food and to manufacture the food so that we can have food to eat. We need to have people in the construction industry in all the different areas of skills that are required so that we can build our own homes. We have people who are African and people who are members of our community who have these skills, but what do? They go out and they work for someone else. They go and they work for all the big construction companies that are not owned by African people. And they work towards the accumulation of profit for other groups of people. Okay, what about we train them and we teach them the importance of contributing to our community? Am I saying that we need to be selfish? Yes, I am saying that we need to be selfish because charity begins at home. If you can't help yourself, who can you help? Someone else? But the problem is we helping everyone else and we're not helping ourselves. So this idea of empowerment would means that our focus should be on trying to develop the things that we need for ourselves. You know what? It is nice to say, I work for a Fortune 500 company. It's nice to say, I work for one of the large corporate industries. But at the end of the day, whose pockets are the profits from that these corporations make going into? Do they go into pockets of people that look like you and me? No, they do not. They go into the pockets of people who do not look like us at all. And then when we go to the bank and we say, you know what, I have a fantastic business idea. And you go in with your business plan all written out. You've been to the accountant. They give you a flow chart for the next 6 months. You've been to all the suppliers. All the people agree they're going to purchase your product when it is manufactured. You have your whole plan laid out. And you go into the financial institutions. And then when they call you, they sit with you They look at your plan. They say, well, sir, you know you have an excellent business plan. But you know what? We're not going to be able to lend you the money. Because, you know, whatever. They're going to give you some sort of pretext why they're going to deny you a loan. In some instances, you know what? The denial might be valid. And in most instances, I think the denials are not. But at the end of the day, we do not own the commercial banks. We do not own financial institutions. So even if we had a chance, a good working chance with a good plan, and it was to be denied of us, if the person on the other side of the table had the authority to grant you the loan without considering without racial considerations, chances are you may have gotten the loan. So what I am saying, when we talk about financial empowerment, we have to be able to educate our children so that when they graduate with their degrees, rather than going to work in the corporate sectors, what they do is they think about having businesses of their own that could contribute towards building our community. We also have to think about owning financial institutions where we could finance businesses in our community that would help build our community up. These are the things we need to be focusing on. Collective economics, we talk about it all the time. We know what it is. It's not that most people don't know what is a credit union. Most persons know what is a credit union. Most persons know what is a susu. But we have one problem, and that problem is we have great problems in trusting each other. And my question is, how could we practice collective economics if we have no trust? How could we have economic empowerment if we have no trust? In most instances, we do not trust each other.
True.
And sadly enough, the reason why a lot of us don't trust each other is because in many instances we cannot trust ourselves. It's because we do not have discipline. Yeah? So what I'm saying is the first thing we have to learn to do is to trust each other. We have to learn to love each other. Yeah, we have to learn to love each other. So when we talk about Iwa Pile, we talk about the development of the good and noble character. And when we talk about fulfillment of destiny and knowing what your purpose is in life and traveling on that road towards the fulfillment of your destiny, we are saying that there are many other people who are traveling the same journey that you're traveling. And along the way, we will need other people to help us reach our objective. And we will continue to complain about the treatment we receive at the hands of other races and of other people until we learn to love and trust each other and to live in unity. We will always have that complaint. So now the question is, how will we be able to have love for each other? How are we going to be able to live in unity? Well, the opening prayer that I did from A.G. Ogbe gives some very good hints as to what we need to do as a people. The first line in A.G. Ogbe, that particular essay for A.G. Ogbe, says, "Let us not engage the world hurriedly." That first line speaks to something that is called patience. If we are to acquire any possession in this life, because we're still discussing financial empowerment, people, if we are to accomplish any objective, financial objective, the first thing we have to do is we cannot be in a hurry. And the first line of that essay, Ifa, says, let us not engage the world hurriedly. The second line says, let us not grasp at the straw of wealth impatiently. So even the second line also speaks of patience. So now my question to you is, if you love your brother, wouldn't you exercise patience and forbearance? When your brother does something wrong, whether it is deliberate or accidental, do you exercise forbearance? Do you forgive him? Do you exercise patience with him? Or do you immediately lose patience? All right. You know, is the next question to go with that? What about if it was not someone who looked like you? Will you be patient? Would you have forbearance if it was someone else of another race who did something wrong to you or made a mistake in treating you badly and treated you badly as a result? Well, I'll tell you what. What I've discovered is our people generally tend to be more patient with people who don't look like them. Why? Is it because we dislike ourselves? Maybe. Because the education we received about people like us, none of it is good. You look at the newspaper, you don't see people like us being portrayed as anything good. We don't control the media houses, so we don't have no control over that. Front page of the newspaper is this person was gunned down, or this bandit went here, or this young man was doing this or whatever, and it's always one of our children. So I am saying, how patient are we with our brothers? How much love do we show our brothers? But now let me go back to the same Udu Ifa of A.G. Akbe. The next line in the essay Ifa says, when we arrive at a cool place, let us rest fully. So the question now I'm asking my people is, how many of us are able to rest comfortably when the night comes? How many of us, in other words, do have a conscience problem because of the things that we have done wrong to our own brothers during the course of the day? When you lie down, do you sleep? Or do you remain up for a very long time thinking about all the different things that you went through during the course of the day that wasn't so good, that you didn't do that was too good? In resting, not only do we review the things that we have done during the course of the day, but during the rest, sometimes we plan and we anticipate what we're going to do in the next day to come. Right? So I'm saying now, if it is that when you lie down to rest, you have difficulties resting, maybe you need to evaluate your actions. Because if you did the correct actions, I can assure you you're going to rest very peacefully at night. And if you plan ahead in most things that you have to do, then at the end of that day, you will be satisfied because you have done the actions of what is correct. Okay, the next line is in the same essay for A.G. Akbe, that we must give continual attention to the future. A.G. Akbe is a general lesson that will help us, not only with financial empowerment, but it would help us to improve our lives. It is saying you must give continuous attention to the future. Meaning before you just get up and run out and do things, you must take some time and you must think about it. So we go on right back to resting too. Okay? When you rest, sometimes what you do is you plan ahead. So that when the time comes for you to do, giving continuous attention to the future, you are able to go out and execute things with a measure of comfort that would bring you the success that you need. And the second to last line in A Geography from that essay, Aoife says that you must give thoughts to the consequences of things. In other words, before you even do it, think about what is going to be the consequence of what you're about to do.
Shit.
Does this not teach us to have financial success and to be financially empowered, that we have to apply all the principles of A Geography? Okay, I will give the last one. And the last one that is mentioned in the essay of A Geography, some people may say I'm not qualified to interpret essay IFA. But if you think a little bit, this essay IFA could be applied to all aspects of a person's life. But today, we're just dealing with financial empowerment. The last part of that essay IFA says, and all the things that I've just mentioned, the reason you must do them is because eventually you're going to leave here and you're going to go to Orisa. And all that you have done while you are here, the generations that come after you is going to follow your example. So some people say that essay IFA frequently, but they never spend the time to even give it the depth of thoughts that it deserves.
Mm-hmm.
So I am appealing. We must learn to love each other. We must have forbearance. We must not always be in a hurry to do everything. When the night comes, get yourself some rest. Don't be wicked. It's the wicked who doesn't be able to rest. Don't be wicked. You're not going to sleep properly. You know? And take some of that time also to think about what the next day holds for you, as long as Olodumare grants you the grace to get up on your 2 feet. Do not be thoughtless in your actions. All of this is how you love each other, and how you love yourself. All of this is how you are able to forbear your brother if he makes a mistake. All right? So, A Geography, I normally use it to open because A Geography is the supporter, but A Geography is also the first and the father of all Udus. Is the principal Udu. Some people might be hearing this for the first time who might be on the stream. All right? The term Udu is short for the word Oludu, which means disciple. All right? But I ain't here to teach IFA in that sense. I'm just here to deal with financial empowerment. So let's go back a little bit to the financial empowerment now. The discipline that is required for saving and for using collective economics for members of our community. The time is now here upon us when it has become incumbent on us for us to be able to join together, join our resources together to be able to build the things that we want. I have one piece of good news to report to all the members of our community, not just the Ifa Orisa community, the Baptist, the Shouter, but to all African people in Trinidad. There has been a series of meetings for an international organization for Ifa devotees around the world. The Trinidad and Tobago chapter has been working very hard in bringing about the necessary adaptations to establish a regulatory body for our community in Trinidad. Hopefully, within the next couple of months, we'd be having an election and we would be having a proper executive put in place. This now would facilitate our ability to establish institutions in this country. So that is the good news. There are many who would not like to see it happen. I've spoken of this in some of my previous videos before, whether you choose to believe it or not. There are people who do not want to see the African community advance, but guess what? They cannot stop the work of Oludumare or Ifa. And it is the destiny, and it is now the time for our people to come together and to do the things that we need to do. So in closing, I would encourage all the members of our community to come together. Everybody is not going to come. There is always going to be those who would not want to support our effort. But among those of us who are conscious and aware, and among the initiated people, it is important for us to be able to start using our resources collectively. I've spoken about the formation of credit union, education board, so many different things over the last, let's say, 10, 12 videos. And I am appealing things like susus, isusu. Now I'm saying in whatever form. Before I was saying the traditional susu. But now I'm saying whatever form of collective and community efforts that can be made, we all need to join together and start working together towards a common goal, which is the unification of our community. We are also talking about susus for business purposes, for business persons. We are asking you to join with other businessmen and women in groups of 10, having each person contribute $1,000 for 10 months, where you all could raise a pool of at least $100,000. With this $100,000, we are asking you to bolster your businesses. And the reason we are asking you all to bolster the businesses is because next year we are going to open a large credit union. When the credit union opens up, we do not want to be writing a check to send it to somebody else. We want to make these checks out to businesses in our community. I want you all to understand what I'm saying. Now is the time for the efforts to be made with members in the same community who have business. Forget the competition. Forget the fighting. Forget wanting to be the only black man who have a store in this area. Do away with that nonsense. It is destroying us. Instead of doing that, why not get together? This is what other groups are doing. If you all get together, maybe you all could buy together and pay less. Maybe if you all get together, you all might be able to source greater amounts of capital, which is what we're trying to do through using the simple traditional susu methods. Imagine if next year, when June comes along, we have enough businesses in our community in different parts of the country that the credit union could be directing our members to your businesses. And they will be coming with a check in hand. Again, every person is not for business. So even for the regular members of our community, form a little bit of susu and thing among all your members and try to help each other. You may have a part of your house that isn't complete, that you've been wanting to complete, but you don't have the money. Join with 10, 20 other members of your community. Have a little small susu, even a little weekly susu for a small money. And you take the money now and you save it every time you get a hand. If it's every week and it's running for a month and you're getting a hand once a month, have a little discipline. Save the money. Your house will finish, but you have to have discipline. So again, in closing, I'm appealing to us to cooperate. And the simple way, which is a proven and tried way, is the susu. This is what our ancestors has been doing from time immemorial. And it has worked for them quite well. There are many simple businesses that could be done. A bakery is a simple business. It's flour and sugar and a few other ingredients. The most expensive thing you may have to do is put together a commercial oven or purchase one, as the case might be. We need catering businesses. We need agricultural businesses. We need furniture businesses. We need appliance businesses. We need clothing businesses, jewelry businesses. People, think about it. We go to all these feasts, we go to all these spiritual events, we use up all these products. How much of the OT is produced locally? How much of the wines that is offered is produced in our community? How much of the olive oil, the palm oil? If all they form a little cooperative and import the thing by the keg and bottle it off and put a little label, we could get it a little cheaper and everybody could benefit. Who know to make a little homemade wine? I want to encourage nobody to break the law and make babash, but we like to use clear or tea. I am saying there are things we can do to help ourselves. All we need to do is simply cooperate.
True.
All right, this is not too much. And if it is that you don't trust your brother and this and that and the other, you don't have family, you must have a brother and a sister. And if you can't trust them, then I think you really have a problem. The problem mightn't be other people. The problem might be you. So really, if you're initiated and you're working on developing a good, balanced, noble character, and you have a destiny that you're here to fulfill, generally both developments, level of improvement in both contributes to humanity and building better communities. People, stop thinking selfishly and individualistically. It is what is destroying us. The education that we are receiving to compete against each other destroys us. When we join together, we could all have more food on our plate. Okay? With that, I would say Odabo, and I would be on again next Friday with financial empowerment, and hopefully I might have some more good news to bring to you all concerning the progress that is being made by the National Executive to form a head body to represent all of the Ifa Orisa community and all of the African unconscious community in this country. The other communities have organizations that is moving forward and making progress for them. We would soon be having one, and next year we plan to put a lot of institutions on board, educational institutions, financial institutions, and a lot of organizations for women and for youths. And it's just too much for me to mention. So again, Odabo, and see you next show.